This is going to be recorded. We'll send it out afterwards, so most people will be watching it that way. And once again, we are here with the wonderful Ken Martin from the DNC. I have spoken to him and his team in advance. We're going to be having a candid conversation, and I will try to pass on some of your questions, but we're going to start with what is really incredibly breaking news. In fact, I have not even actually been able to see it myself because I was driving around trying to find a spot in the shade. So we just had big news out of California. Gavin Newsom just held a press conference. For all I know, it is maybe just wrapping up. And Ken, why don't you tell us what is happening?
Well, the governor is following through on his promise, which is he's going to be bringing a map forward to the legislature to actually put a special election on the ballot for this November 4th. So there will be a campaign here to redistrict here in California. And this comes on the heels of course, Greg Abbott and Donald Trump in a really unconstitutional power grab in the state of Texas, of course, in their racist gerrymander there in Texas. They're trying to steal 5 seats, and I'm really proud of Governor Newsom and, of course, other California Democrats who are leading the way. As I said before, and you've heard me say this, Jessica, that this is not the moment for us actually to cower and shirk away. We actually have to fight fire with fire right now. That means we cannot, keep playing by the old playbook with one hand tied behind our back when our Constitution is literally being shredded in front of our eyes, when, voting rights are being trampled. This is not the time for us to actually bring a pencil to a knife fight. We've got to bring a gun to a knife fight. We've got to fight fire with fire, and we've got to do everything we can to prevent the Republicans from gerrymandering throughout this country.
Okay, good. So I think that, most people who are going to be on this live are very supportive, right? We are glad to see Gavin Newsom fighting. There is a lot of appreciation for Gavin Newsom. Not everybody agrees with every one of his policies.
Sure.
I do not. However, he's really brought a certain willingness to get down in the gutter that I think people are really craving right now. And so, having said that, when I sent out a thread this morning to my subscribers, I have about 150,000 subscribers here on Substack who take action.
Yes.
These are people who work their asses off for our democracy, right? And I said, I'm going to be interviewing Ken Martin today. What would you like me to ask? And there were a lot of questions along the lines of like, what the hell is going on? Why are we not fighting harder? And I think what people want to see is more of what Gavin Newsom is doing. And Gavin Newsom is getting down, like, he's been posting in all caps to sort of mock Donald Trump. He's mocking. It's not something that, honestly, any of us want to see, our politics devolving. But on the other hand, the sort of era of gentility that Democrats have been staying in has just, it's failed, right?
Well, that's absolutely right. Let me just say what I ask people all over the country is, if you're not willing to fight like hell for the things you believe in, do you really believe in them at all, right? And I think that's part of the challenge right now. Donald Trump has thrown out the playbook of yesteryear, right? The idea that there were norms and guardrails that no one wanted to cross, that's a thing of the past. And I'll give you an example on that. About 2 months ago, remember when a kid died of measles in Texas?
Yes.
Well, I sent out a tweet and a statement saying Robert Kennedy murdered a child today. You know who the first people to complain were? Democrats. And then I get a call from a senior ranking elected official in D.C. saying, well, I think you crossed a line. We got to preserve the option to work with the Republicans. We shouldn't be doing things like this. Well, it's bullshit. I mean, again, we are literally in a moment right now when all bets are off. We cannot keep playing by the antiquated playbook right now. Right? If we want to get back to any sort of normalcy, we have to win. And now is not the time to sit back and worry about whether or not the Republicans like what we're doing. You think they give a shit about what Democrats think when they're moving their stuff forward? Not one iota. Yeah. So we have a responsibility right now. And there are elected officials. Trust me, I don't control the elected officials. Let me be very clear. I can't control what they do or they don't do. But I can only speak for myself. Right? I say the Serenity Prayer every single morning. And this is due to the fact that I grew up the son of a single mom who had chemical addiction issues. And when I went through Al-Anon, it taught me a very important lesson in my life. Focus on the things you can control. I can't control other people. I can only control what I do and frankly what our party does. And I've been in 29 states over the last 6 months, my first 6 months, getting the DNC out of DC, fighting back, pushing back. Those town halls that you saw all throughout the country, we did over 150 town halls, all in 50 states. Why did we do that? Because Mike Johnson had the temerity and the balls, I should say, to cancel the town halls that Republicans were doing to basically silence the voices of their constituents. That mainly, by the way, to not just silence, but make sure that the media and the American people did not see the pain and the anguish that was being inflicted upon their neighbors, upon communities throughout this country because of the destructive policies that Donald Trump was and continues to push forward. So what did we do? We took the fight to them. We made sure we were amplifying those stories. We made sure that we were doing local media to make sure that these stories were getting out there, and we were softening ground in congressional districts throughout this country. The Democratic Party is in this fight, and we want to encourage every one of you to be a part of that fight, right? All of us have agency in this conversation. We can't just rely on our elected officials and candidates to save us right now. We're going to require all of us to get into the fight.
Right. Very true. And I think that everybody loved the town halls. That's been one of the really heartening things we've seen, are all of these, these massive sort of throngs showing up across, especially in red districts. That's been really good. I think everyone's been really happy with that. There is a bit of a sense still that we could be fighting harder, and that some of the candidates. Okay, well, I'm going to start with a really blunt question,
Yes.
and I know you're not allowed. Maybe you can't even answer this, but I know that and I will speak for many other people who subscribe, have lost faith in the leadership in Congress. Now, I know this is really politically explosive. No one should ask you this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What do you do when you've got leadership in Congress that the majority will just look at the polls? The majority of Americans and Democrats don't trust to do the job right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's what I would say. I mean, I think the biggest divide in our party right now, if I'm being very honest with you, is not an ideological divide. It's the divide in our party right now is those who are actually fighting and using every lever of power they have, including their voice and their platform to fight back, and those who aren't. And the reality is there's a lot of Democrats who still aren't in the fight. But what I would say is this. I reject the idea that Democrats aren't fighting. I've seen Democratic attorney generals around the country from the very beginning filing lawsuit after lawsuit, using the powers of their office to actually push back against Donald Trump and these Republicans. I've seen governors and local elected officials using the power of their offices to protect vulnerable communities that are being targeted by this administration. I have seen now members of Congress who earlier on, right after, of course, Trump was inaugurated, you heard members of Congress saying, well, we don't have power, right? They now realize they do have power, the power of their voice, the power of their platforms to move public sentiment. And we've seen them fighting. And so, look, have been buoyed in recent weeks and months by the fact that many of our elected officials understand that at this moment right now, it's not the time to sit back. It's not the time to play nice. It's actually the time to step forward, use the power you have. Even if you think you don't have power, you still have power, and many of them are using it. There's still some that aren't. And, frankly, I'll let other folks judge, leadership at the end of the day. What I'm most interested in right now is stopping this guy in his tracks, doing everything we can to win in 25 and 26.
100%. But I do think that what we see, I don't want to push back too hard on this, but we look at an election like the one in New York City, right, with Zohran Mamdani, who's gotten very little, if any, support from establishment Democrats, but who voters are in love with for a very good reason, I think. I'm a huge fan. He is embracing policies that, for whatever reason, some in the sort of mainstream Democratic Party will not embrace. Definitely very much tougher on the Israeli government, not taking money from AIPAC, things like that, right? That is a hugely popular position that the party will not adopt. And I'm just telling you, the comments I get are like, why won't they stop taking AIPAC money, for example? He's really in on lowering rent, on making childcare more affordable. He's going out and talking to people in a way that's very real.
Yes.
How do we get leadership and people in the Democratic Party in a leadership structure to go out and show that they understand what is actually happening with their base.
Well, I think this is a really fair critique, and I will tell you that I endorsed Mandani as soon as he won that primary, because I've always taken the position that our job as party leaders is to respect the will of the primary voters, right? Whoever they send as our nominee, we have to fight like hell to get them elected, right? We are a big tent party. We have conservative Democrats, we have centrist Democrats, we have progressives like me, and then we have leftists. And they're all welcome in this party. We win through addition, not subtraction. We win by growing our coalition, not pushing people out. But I think the reason Mamdani won is not ideological. I really do. And I'll tell you what it's really about. Because he won voters across the ideological spectrum in New York, right? He won because of, one, authenticity.
Yes.
Two, he ran for something, not just against something.
Yep.
Right? And three, he was ubiquitous, both in those in-person spaces. He campaigned everywhere and he talked to everyone. And then in those digital spaces, he was everywhere, right? So if we're going to draw lessons from Mamdani, it's authenticity matters. And you can't fake authenticity. People have a good bullshit meter, right? They can smell through all of it. You're either authentic or you're not. And he was authentic, and he campaigned with the positive vision of how you build New York. And I think those are the lessons that we really have to draw from this. That means if you're a conservative Democrat or a leftist Democrat or anything in between, that's the lesson you need to draw, is how you campaign. Giving people a positive sense of what you stand for really matters, and being authentic. So look, and let me say this. I find it shameful. Again, I was the author of the Superdelegate Reform coming out of 2016, because I saw our party basically tell the supporters of one of the presidential candidates to go pound sand, that their voice didn't matter, that who they supported wasn't going to get any support from the Democratic Party, and that at the end of the day, they didn't have a say. It was shameful. That's why I brought the Superdelegate Reform forward, and also why I brought the Neutrality Pledge forward in 2017, because party leaders at all levels, but party leaders, especially in the DNC, should keep their thumb off the scale and make sure at the end of the day that we bring people into the conversation and unify the party afterwards around our nominee. It's much harder if people are pushing people out of the conversation and saying your voice doesn't matter. You don't have an opinion. Let me just share one story on this.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important. In 1948, you and I weren't born. Most of your listeners weren't born then. But there's a convention, a national convention in Philadelphia. And a young mayor of Minneapolis brings a civil rights plank to the party platform committee. This is the Democratic Party Platform Committee.
I know
right?
what you're talking about.
Yes. Well, here's what happens. The Party Platform Committee of the DNC votes it down.
Yep.
Literally votes down a civil rights plank, right? This young mayor, undeterred, brings that minority report to the floor of the convention. He builds enough support for it. He gets up and he gives a speech where he says it's time for the Democratic Party to march out of the shadows of states' rights, forthrightly into the bright sunshine of human rights and civil rights. It passes. It cements our party as the party of civil rights. All those racist Dixiecrats who were in our party at the time get up and leave, and it changed our party forever. In 1970, it was feminists and women who pushed our party on equal rights and on reproductive rights. In 2012, I was proud to be one of the authors of the marriage equality plank in our party platform. Guess what, folks? You know this. Our party never evolves on critical issues without new voices, pushing our party on these issues to be better. So the reality for me is, why do we celebrate a big tent? Because it's the only thing that's going to help move our party forward, continue to evolve our party on issues. So we shouldn't be afraid of our differences. We should celebrate them, and we should encourage them. We should continue to grow our coalition and bring voices into this conversation.
Tell them who the mayor was.
Oh, I forgot to say that. It was Hubert Humphrey. Hubert Humphrey, who then went on to be a U.S. Senator, of course, and vice president, our nominee in 1968. I forgot that part.
It's a famous story. And there was no air conditioning in the hall when he made the speech, and it was very hot, and he apparently was just soaked in sweat. It's a great story. Yes, I agree. And it's as much as it is important for people to be pushing the party, and it is true, it is a people's movement who will always do the push. There is also a sense that the party can at least be willing to change. And I think that some of the frustration has been feeling like again, on issues like Israel-Palestine, on issues like Medicare for all, on issues like embracing transgender rights and equality completely and not trying to tack to the middle. I have a transgender teenager, so like this is a very central issue for me. But when we hear politicians suddenly go, well, and politicians that we otherwise really like, but these sort of concessions that are sort of trying to cave to some imaginary center or base that is never going to be the coalition that helps us win elections. It's very frustrating for people.
I agree with you 100%. Let me say this. I started in politics in 1990 with a bushy-haired college professor in Minnesota named Paul Wellstone. It was the first campaign I worked on, and I would just tell you that for me, he was my hero and my inspiration. But when I was working, I was 18 years old, and I was a young radical. I wanted to burn the party down, right? And as many of us did, we were frustrated with the establishment, frustrated with politicians not delivering on their promises. But one thing he said to me, which all these years later, and I'm an old man now, that stuck with me, is he said, look, no institution will ever change completely from the outside. Yes, you need a movement, a grassroots movement of people on the outside, but to really, truly make the change you want, you have to get involved in it, and you have to change the party, make it better. That's what I've spent 35 years of my life trying to do, make this the party that we all deserve, and certainly that one that I can be proud of. And I guess to your listeners and to you and others, get involved. The party belongs to those who show up, right? If you're frustrated with the party and politicians, get involved, stay involved, and keep pushing them, right? Because that is truly the only thing that's going to change it. And unlike the Republican Party, by the way, and this is why I love our party, unlike the Republican Party who drums people out of their party, right? If there's any dissent or, anyone doesn't agree with them, we welcome dissent and debate. We want a conversation. We want our party to actually evolve on issues. So, hear me out. I brought a whole series of reforms to the DNC to open this process up, to democratize our DNC, to make sure your voices are heard. And as long as I'm the chair, which who knows, how long I'll be the chair.
How long you'll want to be the chair.
But truly, as long as I'm here, this party is going to be open to all voices, including people that I might have disagreements with, because at the end of the day, that's how we actually get stronger.
Okay. So then let's talk. I mean, it's a sort of, again, the elephant in the room of that conversation, because I did have a lot of people say, well, what happened with David Hogg? And I'm sure this is a question you've been asked a million times. What did happen with David Hogg?
Yeah.
Because it goes back to this, and you mentioned what happened with Bernie Sanders. There's a lot of sensitivity in this area for people who feel like their candidates are shunted out. And I hear you saying that you are fighting that exact thing, but
that's right.
It's not the impression people have gotten. So
this is the challenge. I actually think what David's trying to do with primary folks is really important.
Yeah.
Primaries are important. One, it brings fresh perspectives and ideas into the conversation. Two, it holds Democratic elected officials accountable, right? And three, at the end of the day, it brings new candidates into the fold, whether it's candidates of color, women, young candidates. It's really important to have primaries. And I always supported David in this, who I've known for years and consider a good friend.
Right.
The challenge is I'm also bringing forward a neutrality pledge that says party officers cannot be involved in primaries. Both are rooted in the same sort of belief system, which is how do we make sure we bring new people in? How do we make sure we bring new voices into this process, right? And not push people out. For me, the neutrality pledge is really important because I saw a whole host of people who will never come back to the Democratic Party because of the way they were treated by the party leaders and bosses in 2016.
Yes.
And so, trust me, and you can ask David this, there's really no beef between David and I. We just could not find a way to reconcile these two positions, right? He wanted to be a party officer and primary folks. And what I'm trying to say is, how do we reconcile these two? There was really no way to do that. And so he just decided to resign. I have great respect for David, but I want you to understand where both of us were coming from was a place of actually making sure our party bosses are not the ones, and the establishment is not the one making decisions for our party, but that the grassroots voices have a say in who our nominees are.
Okay, I actually think that's very fair, and I think that this has been misconstrued a lot. And I tend to believe that you are being earnest and truthful here when you say that So let me just make sure my listeners understand this, and I do, is that the reason that you were disagreeing with David Hogg was because as party officers, you're trying to keep your thumb off the scale in either direction.
That's exactly right.
And your reason for doing that was because of what happened in 2016.
Well, you only have to follow my record on this. I was the author of the Superdelegate Reform in 2017. I was the first person as an officer, a vice chair, who brought a neutrality pledge forward in 2017, right? This is a longstanding belief, and anyone who's followed me in the DNC knows, right? One of the reasons why the establishment didn't support me in my race for chair and the billionaires and others, is because I've been working my ass off to reform this party. Many of the Unity Reform Committee proposals that came out of that 2016 convention, I was the champion for, and I will continue. And if you look at my reforms right now that I'm bringing forward, it's all about opening up the party, democratizing our party, and giving voices to the grassroots. And so, look, you don't have to take my word for it. You can ask anyone in the DNC. Ken Martin is a reformer. I will continue to be a reformer. But the challenge was never about David or I. I mean, it really got misconstrued, I guess, in the press. And I would, just say, I appreciate what David's trying to do. I think, I come out of organized labor. I'm the first, card-carrying union member to be a DNC chair. And unions endorse all the time in primaries, right? And other organizations do as well. But I think it's important for party officers to stay out, because when we do that, we're sending a message that this party is an exclusive club, that you have to think a certain way or be someone, be something, that maybe doesn't reflect who our party is. At the end of the day, we want a big tent. We want everyone to feel invited and welcome in it. And the way we do that is by keeping people like me out of it. You don't want me picking winners and losers. You don't want me saying, I support this candidate, because when I say that, guess what? The supporters of another candidate say, well, the party chair just said, I don't matter. And so I just want you to know this is really important to me, and I'm sorry that it got so, I don't know, it was really misconstrued in the press. And I'm sorry it did, but I want you guys to know it comes from the right place for both David and I.
Yeah, I hear that. And I think it is fair to say that if you're angry about what happened with Bernie Sanders in 2016, and I know a lot of people are, there's enormous bitterness about it. I don't know that you logically can be also angry about Ken making a decision to say, I'm not going to put a thumb on the scale, because that is exactly what should have happened in 2016. So we kind of can't have it both ways. I'm sure I'll get some hate for saying that, but I think it's fair. I mean, I think it's fair. I want to ask another question that is, again, probably you won't like all that much, or maybe you will. You seem pretty willing to hear these hard questions, but we got a report recently talking about fundraising for the DNC. I believe it was one of the arms of the DNC that was raising a huge amount of money, and a huge amount of it was not going to candidates.
I know, it's terrible. Yeah,
it's terrible. And at the same time, we're watching new, young, progressive candidates sort of coming out and saying, I'm not going to take super PAC money. Yeah. I'm going to bring up AIPAC again, because I think they're quite problematic, and I think everybody thinks they're, not everybody, many people do. Super PACs in general. I hope you guys can still hear us, because we have a chopper circling over us, but I think Substack is pretty good at filtering that stuff out. We'll find out. This is Los Angeles. There's always a chopper.
Yeah.
What's the DNC going to do about this?
Well, look, I just introduced a resolution to ban dark money in our presidential primary contest.
Okay.
Right? And I just literally, that just came out the other day.
Okay.
I have been a longtime supporter of campaign finance reform and in Citizens United, overturning that disastrous decision and getting dark money out of our politics. It's absolutely critical, which is why, by the way, a number of those billionaires weren't supporting me when I ran for DNC chair. And so, it's really important for folks to know that this is a position that's not newfound for me. As long as I've been in politics, which is 35 years, I came up as a grassroots organizer, right? I believe that the way you win elections is, by, through personal contact, door to door, neighbor to neighbor, organizing people and inspiring people into voting for your candidate. And the corrosive impact of dark money is beyond anything we've ever seen right now. I mean, you could see that in Ohio with a cryptocurrency super PAC that spent, $300 million against Sherrod Brown in the final month of the campaign. There's all of these dark money organizations out there that are overriding the will of voters by essentially spending millions and hundreds of millions of dollars in unregulated dark money that's not transparent to voters to try to influence elections. We need to get it out of it. Now, I don't have any control over what Congress can do to actually change course here, or what the FEC should do, or what the Supreme Court can do. The one thing I do have control over is how we're going to conduct our presidential primary process, right? Our nominating process. And that's why the dark money ban that I brought forward is specific to the 2028 presidential primary process, because we can't control that. So, but some restrictions.
Okay. I'm glad to hear it. I actually, I have a lot of faith in Substack's ability to filter out that chopper noise, but I'm just going to do this just in case. We're going to wrap it up because Ken's got to move on to the next meeting. I actually think this has been a very good conversation. I do want to acknowledge again, like, the town halls have been amazing. Your 50-state strategy, which I'm sure you guys all know, going into all 50 states, really trying to run even in the reddest areas, bringing funding to states that have been long neglected by the DNC. Great. I think what the grassroots wants is more contact, more signs that the party, and, you know, it's unfair to saddle you all with all of this, but like Schumer, Jeffries are hearing us.
Yep.
And we love to hear about the dark money coming out of the party. I have had a lot of requests to ask you for fewer fundraising texts. So, you know,
that's a whole nother thing. And I couldn't agree with you guys more. I mean, it's just, I've told the team, we've got to actually ask people to volunteer their time, right?
Right.
To get out on the doors, to organize in their neighborhoods, to, you know, people have so much talent, but the only thing we ever ask for is their treasury. So I'm absolutely 100% committed to that. And we could go on and on about the, you know, we can talk about dark money, but the reality is that there's a broken fundraising system in politics here we also have to fix. And I'm with you on that.
Right.
So let me just say this. I want to give all of your listeners my email address because I think it's really important to stay in touch. I have a plaque in my office that says none of us are as smart as all of us. I don't have all the answers, right? There was a little bit of a savior complex that developed during the chairs race, as if, you know, one person could save the Democratic Party. No. It's going to take all of us. And look, I don't have all the ideas. I really, truly don't. So my email is martink@dnc.org. martink@dnc.org. Send me ideas. Send me thoughts. Send me constructive criticism. When I fuck up and make mistakes, please let me know. I'm human, right? And, you know, at the end of the day, just stay in touch. We're in this together. And, you know, I can't control all the other pieces, so I'm going to focus on the things I can control. And please tell me when I'm doing things good, bad, ugly. When you have ideas, please send them along. And thank you so much, Jessica, for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate your being here. And we got to, you know, hats off for the courage to give your email address out to everybody. That is a brave move. And I have a feeling you will be hearing from many people.
Good.
And yeah, good. Thank you for talking to me in this wonderful park. And I hope you guys heard over the choppers. And I hope that we can have another conversation again soon.
Absolutely.
Okay. Bye, you guys.
See
you
ya.
later. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I'm going to turn this off.